Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Harvest Ridge today. Pastor Kevin, our lead pastor, is in El Salvador with the missions trip, and so that's where he's at. But I'm Mike Hadinger, and I'm our student ministries pastor, and it's great to be here, being able to share with everybody. Almost everybody. Hello. Can you, in the back row, can you tap that guy ahead of you? Thank you. Talking up here. Good? All right, thank you. Man, it's like, if you want to be on your phone, you can be out in the commons, right? Like, you can do that anywhere. You're in here, so you might as well pay attention. It's like, yeesh. So, everyone feel nice and awkward now? Yeah. Good. I told him to do that, okay? He's a good guy. There's a point to this. So, for a moment there, I'm up here speaking, and there's 140 people listening to me, but I was focused on what? On the one person who wasn't, right? One person who wasn't. And that was a problem, yeah. So what was really the bigger problem? The problem is that I was choosing to completely focus on that. Right, and so that's the problem I want to talk about today that we do, is we focus in so much on our issues that they become the only things that we can see. We telescope our problems. All right, now you may say, well, this isn't a telescope. And I would say, you're right, it's actually two telescopes connected to each other. Yeah. Right, but that's what we do. Something is wrong, and instantly we zoom in on it, and that's the only thing. It doesn't really matter everything else going on. In that instant, or at least for those few moments, or however long it is, we telescope in on that issue. Right, the issue wasn't so much that he was on his phone. Again, let me clarify. I told him to. He wasn't intentionally. He wanted me to make sure that everyone knew that. Josh, good job. But the bigger issue was that I completely focused on that. Right, instead of thinking, okay, well, I have 140 people who are listening. There's the one person who wasn't. But we do that. Whether it's someone cutting us off in traffic, and then for that 5 to 10 seconds or 5 minutes, all we can think about is what an injustice that is, and the world isn't right until this person gets what they deserve via my hand motions, or hopefully a cop coming along to serve them justice, right? Right? Like, that's not really a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but yet, even if it's for a couple seconds, man, that is the only thing that matters to us. Or, speaking of exaggerating things, I know I love playing pickup soccer or frisbee, and there was 1 week I was, I think it was like springtime, it was just getting warm, and I was excited for frisbee at the end of the week. All week I was looking forward to it, seeing my friends, getting out and playing, and of course Friday comes and it's completely rainy and we can't play, and I am, God, why can't you have let it rain 2 hours later? What is this injustice, Lord? Right, because couldn't play frisbee. Even if it's for a few seconds, it's like, okay, all I can focus on is this problem. It's really, the problem's not that big of a deal. We do this with things that are small or big. Things can be serious. And so I want to talk a little bit about today about this issue, how we telescope on our problems, and that maybe we can focus on a good God a little bit more. And I will say, this is probably something that's not super new. If you've been in church, or honestly, if you've just been around and you've heard good advice, you've heard something like this, of having perspective on your problems. And what I'll say is that I would love to have a completely, amazingly clever and nuanced message that you've never heard before and will completely revolutionize you. But something that I was told is discipleship, which means learning how to follow God, is a lot more of being reminded of things than learning something new. And so today, that's, I think, what I'm going to do is maybe can remind you of something that you probably know already, maybe in a different perspective, in a different light. Maybe it's more of a reminder than something completely new. But this is what I want to share. I think this is where the scriptures that I was studying led us, and so I'll let them speak today. But here's the one point I want to share. The one main thing, if you walk away with one thing, I want to share that having God is better than blank. Having God is better than, fill it in whatever it may be. Having God is better than being married. Having God is better than having the right boyfriend, girlfriend. Having God is better than being married to a different person. Having God is better than having the job that I need. Having God is better than the sickness being gone in me or my family. having God is better than, and I cycle through a lot of different things. Should I put better circumstances? Having God is better than what I want, what I need. And I realized, hey, blank will work. You can fill it in for whatever it is for you. Having God is better than blank. And because what we do when we telescope our problems, when we focus in on our problems there, that's all we can see. What we think, what our hearts are saying to us is, if this was just right, I would be okay. If this was just fixed, things would be okay. That's what our hearts are telling us when we focus on those problems. If this was just different, things would be okay. But having God is better than whatever issue, whatever thing needs to be fixed. And I will say, again, problems are real, and I'm not here to discredit or discount what you're going through. I'm not here to say that, well, hey, if you believe in God, then you should stop being sad, or you should, just get over it and just be happy, because I'm not saying that. I know problems are real. There's brokenness, there's grief, there's hurt. And so I'm not discrediting that. I'm not saying God equals happy all the time. But I am saying that sometimes we have a tendency to focus so much on our problems, we forget how good God is. All right, it's an invitation for both of us who, are believers or non-believers, that maybe we should adjust. Sometimes we think this saying is more like, if I have God, I'll have to lose blank. Man, and this is, in my life, big time, have to adjust and realize God's not trying to take anything from me. He's trying to give me something, which we'll look into as we get into our message today. But having God is better than blank. And we're going to be in Psalms, this side for the video, Psalms 84. Psalms 84 is where we'll be. So if you have a Bible, if you have your phone, feel free to bring it up. We'll have it on the screens as well. But Psalm 84 verses 10 and 11 will be our focus. But okay, here's the roadmap. I have a little roadmap, little diagram for you guys, just so you know kind of where I want to take the next 20 minutes or so. Here's our roadmap. We're going to look at Psalm 84. We're going to go through that. Then step 2 is we're going to go through a story and some other passages from the Old Testament in Numbers, and we'll walk through that story. We'll kind of compare and contrast those with Psalm 84. Then we'll come back to Psalm 84. And you notice it's a lot bigger, and it has 2.0, because hopefully these other passages will help make it look bigger, better, and a lot cooler. All right, so that's step 1, Psalm 84. Step 2, these other verses. Step 3, we're going to come back to the psalm and see how we can read it differently now in light of those other passages. And then finally, we're going to see how all this through Jesus ends up changing us. And look how happy we are at the end, see? And our hands are warm because of the mittens. So, all right, so that's where we're going to go. We're going to look at a couple passages, then we're going to finish with showing us how Jesus makes these passages true for us and actually changes our lives. Understanding them through Jesus. So, all right, that's where we're going to go. But no, step 1, Psalm 84, verses 10 and 11. I invite you to stand as we read some of the scriptures here. Here's what it says. Better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God, doorkeeper is important, than dwell in the tents of the wicked. That's also an important phrase there. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked. For the Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord bestows favor and honor. Let's not miss this last part. No good thing does he withhold from those whose walk is blameless. No good thing does he withhold. And so my prayer is, Lord, that you change people today through these words. I can't change anyone, but you can. So let your word speak. Let just the amazingness of who you are, Jesus, light up our imagination, our minds, and our hearts. Let us be changed. Praise in your name. Amen. And you can have a seat this morning. Thank you. All right, so we're looking at 2 verses in Psalm 84. Now, to give you a quick context, a psalm is essentially is another word for a song. These are ancient prayers or ancient songs that were written they're prayers, they're emotional processes of how we deal with life in light of God. And so Psalm 84 as a whole, it's a prayer of someone who is recognizing the value of God's presence and showing a desire for the nearness of God's presence. So that's what the whole psalm is, 12 verses. It's someone who's writing, and it talks about how even the birds of the air get to be near your house, and it's great for the sparrows, and how someone who's trying to find you is like a pilgrim finding streams of water. They're refreshed and they're strengthened. And this whole psalm is someone who is saying, God, your presence is amazing, and I want to be in your presence. That's what the whole psalm is about. Now we're zooming in on 2 verses here. So these 2 verses are what we're zoomed in on. This little snapshot of the entire psalm. So it's a prayer, it's a song of someone who is declaring this. That I want God, and because God's pretty great to be around. It's someone who I think understands, really, getting this point from having God is better than blank. Again, that's the one point, man. If you walk out of here with one thing, hopefully that's it. Having God is better than fill in the blank for yourself. And what this author is saying, that even when it says, like, I'd rather be a doorkeeper than anything else. Now, this could mean something like an usher. Any ushers in the house that have ushed today? Daryl's here. All right, Daryl. They could be a doorkeeper. It could mean like an usher. It could even mean like a custodian. Someone who does things behind the scenes. Someone who gets things ready for other people to come in to worship. Or it could even mean this word is actually used rarely in the scripture. It could even mean, what it says is someone who is laying upon the threshold. Laying upon the threshold. So maybe even like a beggar. It's possible even this is saying, even like a beggar. I'd rather be an usher, a doorkeeper, custodian. I'd rather even be a beggar if I get to be near God than to live anywhere else. This is the desire that someone's expressing. And you know what a beggar is. You understand that image. I mean, if you've been downtown Cleveland, these poor people, this quality of life, they're homeless and just begging for money. I can remember one time I was in New York City, and I was devastated by the breakup of my 6-week girlfriend at the time, and college days, man. And so I decided to take a spring break overnight bus trip from Philadelphia to Connecticut with a 1 a.m. layover in New York City, which is something I would recommend for nobody. But yeah, walking from one bus station to the next in the middle of the night, I remember walking by one individual, and there was a policeman there with them, but they were just kind of sitting there. I mean, they were awake and alert, and there was this red shiny substance they were just sitting in, and I realized they were literally sitting in a puddle of their own blood. And they weren't completely dying, like it was, again, the policeman was there and things were under control, but and I think of that image of, miserable conditions. Sitting there alone outside, it's in March, it's cold, asking for food. What a miserable place to be. But yet, this person is saying, I'd rather even be that as long as I get to be near God. And that's a sentiment I think that we can maybe, we find in like romantic stories or songs, like, as long as I get to be with you, I'll live in a swamp without any arms or something like that. As long as we're together, no matter what. That's a sentiment we can hear in like romance stories. But I guess you'd drown if you had no arms in a swamp. I'm sorry, I'm thinking about that. So that wouldn't be good. But that's the sentiment that we have here, is this person is saying, I'd rather, as long as I get to be near you, God, I'd rather choose that than have a good, comfortable life without you. That's the sentiment that this author, this songwriter is sharing with us. They're saying having God is better than blank. All right, so there we've completed step 1. We've read through Psalm 84. Now we're going on to step 2. We're going to look at a story from the book of Numbers, a couple other passages. We're going to kind of walk through it. I'm going to fill in some blanks here. But we've looked at Psalm 84. Now we're going to look at this passage in Numbers and compare and contrast some reactions and some decisions from these people as opposed to our author of the Psalms. So Numbers 16. Excuse me. Here's what it says. So Korah rose up against Moses. Now, I say 1 through 3-ish, not because I changed anything, but it's like Korah and his friends, Dathan and Abiram, and there's the son of the son of the son of. I just took that out because it's not as important for here. So we're not throwing anything else in. Korah rose up against Moses. They came as a group to oppose Moses and Aaron. Now, again, Moses and Aaron are the leaders of the Israelite nation. So the Israelites were a nation that kind of God had chosen to be their people, and Moses and Aaron, who were brothers, they were the leaders. They were in charge. All right, they were the ones who led, heard from God and were leading this nation. So there's a group of people that are coming against the leaders of the nation, okay? So I'm not saying all dissent or protesting is bad, not saying anything like that, but that's just the situation we are here. Korah is coming against these guys and saying, you have gone too far. The whole community is holy. Everyone's holy. The Lord is with them. Why then do you set yourself above the Lord's assembly? So Moses and Aaron, God would use them, and Korah and his followers and his people were coming and saying, okay, basically translation, who made you the boss of us? Who made you so special that God only uses you? We're all special. We're all important. Right? Any teenagers in the room that may have had this attitude with parents before, or parents having dealt with maybe the saying, my house, my rules? Has that ever been used or paraphrased by anybody? Yep. So I remember one time when I was 13, the pinnacle of all knowledge, my dad, we were in some kind of argument. I don't remember what it was about. Probably my hair was too long, or I didn't mow the grass or something. I don't know. But basically I was having an attitude, and my dad said, well, my house, my rules, or once you have your own house, you can set the rules. And I remember what I said to him with all the accumulation of adolescent wisdom and just the right tinge of arrogance to bring my point home. I said, it's not your house. You didn't build it. That didn't go over well, I'll say. Now, what I'll say is, even though that was true, he didn't build the house. The house wasn't his in that sense. Right? Even though I was saying something that was true, the attitude there obviously was not right. Right? So this is what's happening here with Korah and Korah and his people are coming saying, you think you're so special, you think you're the boss, God only uses you. No. We want to be important too. God uses us as well. You didn't make us, or you're not the boss of us. So that's what's happening. So here's what happens. So Moses, now the leader, was interesting. Bible calls him such a humble man. What he does is says he falls on his face before God. He doesn't snark back right away, but he goes to God, and so he gives them a challenge. Moses replies and says, all right, let's have a challenge. Come out tomorrow with everybody. Let's come before God and see who God chooses. All right, so Moses replies with this challenge to Korah and his people. Moses also said to Korah, here's what he says, now listen, you Levites. Listen, you Levites. That's the tribe or the family that Korah belonged to. Isn't it enough for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the rest of the community and brought you near himself? Isn't it enough that he has brought you near himself to do the work at the Lord's tabernacle and to stand before the community and minister to them? I think, do we have that number 16, 8 through 10? He has brought you and all your fellow Levites near himself, but now you are trying to get the priesthood too. Isn't it enough? So here, let me clarify that a little bit. So actually, Korah was a family member of the Levites. All right, so another diagram. It's diagram day here at church. Go ahead and put that up. So the community of Israel had 12 tribes or families, not like the mafia, but just 12 families. And the tribe of Levi was one of them. And God chose the tribe of Levi, not because they were anything special, just because he chose them, because he's gracious and he gives what he does. And so he chose the tribe of Levi especially to be the priests and to be the doorkeepers of his house. All right, this is the system that they were living in, is God chose the Levites. Now Korah, the person we're talking about, was part of the Levites. All right, so Korah's family was already chosen out especially from the nation to do a special job. Right? They were out of 12 tribes, they were already one of the ones chosen, or the one chosen. And yet they're saying, we want to be used too. So what were they doing? They were so focused on the fact that Moses and Aaron were above them, that there was still more people that were more special than they were. Instead of seeing what God had already done in them, God chose them. God chose them to do something special out of everyone else. But instead of focusing on that, of what God already gave them, they were so focused on what they didn't have. They were so focused on someone else still being better than them. So when Moses says, "Isn't it enough for you?" what he's saying is, God's already given you this really special position that you didn't earn at all. God already gave you this job to be the doorkeeper of his house. But yet, it's not enough for you. They're wanting more. They're wanting more. They were telescoped on the fact that they weren't in charge, that someone else was still above them. And it reminds me of, again, going back to college days. I had two friends who were getting married, and once you decide to get married, you pick your bridal party, which to me is interesting. It's essentially ranking your top 5 or 6 friends. Like, I don't know. I like lists, so it's kind of cool. It's like, oh yeah, but you're not really a jerk about it because it's what you do. So you literally get to choose. You are my top 5 friends. Congratulations. And so the lady picks her bridal party, picks a maid of honor, picks her bridesmaids. But yet one of the bridesmaids, when she found out she wasn't the maid of honor, she refused to be a bridesmaid at all. She's like, well, I thought we were best friends, and so if we're not, then I'm not even going to be a bridesmaid at all. Like, what a ridiculous attitude, right? And of course, that didn't help the friendship. I'll say that. They're not really friends to this day anymore. But what an attitude is, if I better get the top or I won't get anything at all. That sounds ridiculous, but yet we do that. We instead of being thankful that she was chosen as, man, I'm one of your top 5 friends, it was either one or nothing. What an attitude. That's essentially, it's what Korah and his people were doing here. God already chose them specifically. God said, you are my go-to people, but yet they said, well, we want even more. Not happy with that. They didn't get the idea that having God was better than blank. They thought, we need to be even more important. We want to be at Moses and Aaron's level, and we'll be happy. Okay, so what happens? They show up for the challenge. Remember, Moses said, okay, we'll do this. Everyone show up and God will choose. And Moses knew what God was going to do. That's what the story says is they all show up. Korah and his friends are there, and Moses says, all right, he tells the assembly, everyone move back, move away from these people. All right, say this section, you guys are the Korah section. Everyone else move back away from this Korah section here. Actually, Korah's right here. Hey, Korah. Different. This is a different Korah, but that's what he said. Move back from the tents of these wicked men. Tents of these wicked men. Now, keep this in mind. We're going to talk about this in a minute. Tents of these wicked men. So they moved away from the tents. He had everyone back up from them. Now, real quick thought. The reason I have tents of these wicked men bolded is because anyone want to do a Hebrew lesson real quick? Thanks, Pastor Matt. Okay, well, we're going to do it. So, in Hebrew, the words for tents of wicked men the word for tent is ohel. And that one I always thought was easy to remember because what would you say if you had to live in a tent? And so, ohel and then wicked men is rashim. Rashim, ohel, rashim. These are the words for tents of wicked men. All right? Still funny. That's good. That's great. All right, that's what it is in Hebrew. Ohel, rashim. All right. So what happens is all right, a little sidetrack, go back to the main part now. So he says, everyone move back from the ohel rashim, move back from the tents of these wicked men. And the story says happens is God sends fire and the earth literally opens up and swallows them whole. A giant sinkhole level just. That's probably what it sounded like. But man, like crazy thing. God's saying, no, this rebellion is not good. It's rebellion against me. That's what happens in this story. So let's go back to Psalm. All right, now we finished part 2 now. We've looked at Psalm 84. Right now we've looked at this story in Numbers of Korah and his friends. Remember Korah, whose family was chosen to be the gatekeepers, the doorkeepers of God's house. Korah, who Moses says lived in tents of wicked men, and Korah, who felt like what they had from God wasn't good enough. They wanted more. God did not give them enough. Let's go back to our Psalm 84, 10 and 11. Where it says, better is one day in your courts than thousands elsewhere. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked. Again, we have doorkeeper there. What was Korah and his families? What was their job? They were the doorkeepers. They were the gatekeepers to God's house in that community. And this person is saying, I'd rather do that than dwell in the tents of the wicked. And again, the tents of the wicked here, it's the same Hebrew words. Well, here the adjective is a little different, so it's ohel resha instead of ohel reshim. Tents of the wicked. For the Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord bestows favor and honor. No good thing does he withhold. Again, this passage, again, the person is saying, God gives everything that I need. God doesn't hold back anything. But yet Korah and his people were saying, God's given us this, but yet it's not enough. We want more. We need more. Do you see the contrast here between the attitude of the psalmist, the attitude of the person who wrote this versus Korah and his people? No good thing does he withhold from those whose walk is blameless. Let's compare those points a little more closely. Doorkeeper, number one. In Korah and his family, they were the doorkeepers. They were the gatekeepers of the house. That's what the person is saying here. I'd rather do that. Even though Korah was not content. He said, this is not good enough. The psalmist is saying, you know what? As long as I get God, it's good enough. As long as I'm near God, I'm good. Tents of the wicked. Moses said to Korah and his family, you live in the tents, these tents of these wicked men, and yet the psalmist is saying, I'd rather have God than live in the tents of wicked men. And finally, once again, the psalmist is saying, no good thing does he withhold, but yet Korah and his people were saying, this good thing isn't enough. We need more. We want more. Do you see the comparison and the contrast here between these two attitudes? So, okay, one other thing here, and to me this is really cool. I'm going to kind of tie these stories together a little bit more. All right, we have someone over here who was saying these things, who was content and desiring God, versus Korah and his people were the complete opposite. Let's tie it together a little bit. Go ahead to the next verses in Numbers 26:11. It says, but the sons of Korah did not die. So yeah, Korah and his crew, they, according to the story, swallowed up in the earth. Craziness, but yet his lineage did not die. The sons of Korah, descendants of Korah, did not die out. Now, a few generations later, First Chronicles is talking about these are the gatekeepers belonging to the camp of the Levites. Shalom and his fellow gatekeepers from his family, the Korahites, were responsible for guarding the thresholds of the tent, just as their ancestors had been responsible for guarding the entrance to the dwelling of the Lord. All right, so let's put this together. So Korah and his family, God gave him the job as the gatekeepers into his house. Right? Ushers, custodians, whatever it was. Exactly. They were to kind of get God's house ready for everybody. It wasn't the top, but it was still special. And Korah rebels, God swallows him up, but yet his sons didn't die out. And we see here, once again, his lineage, God restores them to their position. God brings them back. God replaces them in their position of serving his house, serving his people. And actually, there's one other verse in 2 Chronicles, I don't think I have it, but where it talks about how the sons of Korah led the people in music and worship. They were one of the worship leaders for the whole nation. They were like Hillsong, Ancient Israel campus. But they were some of the worship leaders. Hillsong is a church with a lot of worship music, if that doesn't land with you. But they were worship leaders for their nation. So these descendants of Korah, they didn't die out. God put them back in their position, and they actually were worship leaders for the nation. Why am I saying this? Well, if you've had your Bible out, or if you may be familiar with the Psalm, go ahead and put up the beginning of the Psalm. Go ahead and put up the intro, Psalm 84. Psalm 84, see the underline up there? So the sons of Korah were the ones who either wrote or were singing this song. It wasn't just anybody. This wasn't just anyone just declaring that I'd rather be near God than be in the tents of the wicked. I trust God that he doesn't hold anything good back from me. These were the very descendants of Korah. the very descendants of the person known for his rebellion against God, they're the ones who are singing this out and declaring this. To me, that's cool. I mean, it's not like Darth Vader level cool reveal or like Aragorn, the son of Arathorn, being revealed in Lord of the Rings, but still pretty cool. Still pretty cool. This isn't just anyone saying this. This is the very family members who's carrying the legacy of this rebellion. They're choosing to sing this. And the significance this carries. And to me, the significance that this psalm now carries, that their family legacy was one of rebellion, was one of ungodly ambition, was one of desiring power that wasn't theirs. But yet they didn't have the attitude of, well, one day we're going to finish what my dad started. We're actually going to take over. They also didn't become bitter at God. No, they chose to sing about God's goodness. To me, that's so cool that these are the unknown Allstars, the sons of Korah that chose to sing this, that chose to declare this about God. That, you know what? Yeah, our father and our family legacy is this, but we would rather, as long as we get God, that's enough for us. We declare that we trust God, that he gives us what's good. The sons of Korah, they chose to sing that having God is better than blank. They chose to sing that. I'm grateful. I can't help but think of a little bit of family legacy that I've been given, where my grandfather grew up in Hungary, Hungarian immigrant, and my dad had said that my grandfather's relationship with his father was so bad, my great-grandfather was just so abrasive, constantly drunk, dealing with alcoholism, that he and my grandfather never had a relationship. And even afterwards, my grandfather hardly ever spoke about him. It was that bad, there was not much of a relationship there. My grandfather's, all of his brothers dealt with alcoholism and either died from it or their lives were destroyed by alcoholism. So my great-grandfather, my grandfather and his brothers, that was their legacy. Yeah, my grandpa and my grandma, when they got married, they decided there's not going to be any alcohol in our house because we're going to follow God. Now, this is not an anti-alcohol message. But this is someone who decided, this is my family's legacy, but I'm going to put God first in our home. And hey, I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it because it's not me, it's my dad and my grandpa. They chose that, and now from a legacy of a immigrant, alcoholism ravaged the family. All 4 of his kids are ministers in churches. 6 of his grandkids are. 2 of them are school teachers. The other 3, well, they're still in college, so they got time. If this is the legacy he's left, he could have been swept up in it and chose to look at the bitterness and brokenness in his life, but he and my grandma made a decision. Not here. We're going to put God first. We believe that God's better, and I'm so thankful my grandfather made that decision. Man, so the opportunity is here for you as well. You're going to telescope onto what's wrong. Again, I'm not discrediting problems. I'm not saying they're not real, but we can telescope on those things, make excuses, or focus on a God who withholds no good thing. A God who is so good and so loving that, man, as long as I'm near God, it doesn't matter. But here's what I'll say. You may be saying, okay, great story. So what? Okay, I'll try harder. It's not about that. It's not about trying harder to focus on your good things. This is where Jesus comes in. This is all true and real for us because of Jesus. Without Jesus, this basically is another self-help sermon. Like, just focus on the good things. Man, what did Jesus do? Jesus came and he made Psalm 84 true for us. Psalm 84, that we can trust that being with God is better and that he doesn't withhold anything good. We can believe that's true because of Jesus. Jesus makes this true for us. Let's look at Romans 8, 31, 32. It's so great. If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also graciously give us all things? Giving us all things graciously. Does that ring a bell? Does that sound familiar? Like maybe it's actually true that God doesn't withhold any good thing from us. That actually being near God is actually a really good thing. Maybe it's actually true because he proved it. He came and died. He gave himself, his very self, for us to love us. And so what I'm saying is, it's not, hey, just be more thankful for what you have. What I'm saying is, hey, God's good, and look at Jesus. Look how he proves that it's true. Look at Jesus. He proved Psalm 84 true by sending Jesus to die for us, and we can trust that having God is better than anything, because he showed us the ultimate love and goodness in Jesus. The ultimate of what we need, the fulfillment and the love and the security and the hope of the future, he gave that to us in Jesus. So what else do we have to worry about? We know he's good. There's a saying that a mouse who befriends a lion no longer fears the weasel. So I would say we have this lion with us, this God who loves us, who, man, if we've seen this lion overcome sin and death and guilt and shame, what else are we worried about? Weasels and snakes and rats and all the other bad names you call people. All right, those aren't important. Focus on who Jesus is, what he's done, what he's overcome. Man, he's so good. And I'm trying to learn that in my life. And I guess all I can do is I hope to share that with you a little bit. Psalm 84 is true. I believe it's true. I believe that God doesn't hold anything good back from us, because I look at Jesus and I see, oh yeah, I believe God wants what's good for us. He proved that. God's not trying to take from me. He already showed he would hold nothing back in giving it to me. He gave him his very self up for me. So that's my invitation is, let's pull a telescope off of our problems, off of our issues, and onto Jesus. Having him, being near him is better than blank, better than your situations changing, better than your circumstances changing, better than whatever it is you need, your feelings changing. If he's near, that's better. Man, so I just invite you to think about who Jesus is and what he's done for you. And with one final thought is, this earth, another saying I'm trying to think of it, the earth, there's a lot wrong with this earth, right? A lot wrong with this earth, but someone who's falling out of the sky with a broken parachute does not need a lot of convincing that this earth's not a bad place to be. Right, there may be a lot wrong here, but if you're falling out of the sky with a broken parachute, someone doesn't need to argue into the fact that, hey, being on the ground here, walking around, is not so bad. That's the only thing they want, right? That's the only thing they can even think about. That's all they need. That's how I want to want Jesus. Is where I don't have to be argued into how good he is. I just want to be able to experience him and know him. And that's my only desire. That's what I want for you too. So my invitation is not, hey, try harder, focus on God, focus on the good things. It's, hey, let's remember who Jesus is. And let how amazing of a truth that is show us through Psalm 84 that he is good, that being with him is better. So before we end, my invitation is for, if there's anyone here who, maybe you don't know this God, maybe you've never been to a church before, maybe this whole religion thing is new or different to you. Even invitation, God's open to anyone. All you have to do is say a prayer. Say, God, I want to follow you instead of living for myself. I want to be your son or daughter. It's as simple as that. So for you, if that's you, that's the invitation here today. And for the rest, let it be a reminder that God is good. He is better than blank. Having him is better than blank. So what I want to end is, we read in this psalm, better is one day in your courts being around you than 1,000 elsewhere. There's an old 90s song that literally says those words. And so I wanted to sing that together before we end. So I invite you to stand. And as we sing that, I invite you to think about Jesus. Think about how good he is. And that truth that, yeah, he really is better than 1,000 days anywhere else doing anything else.